Hi, I'm Linda Matthews, and in this video I'm sharing techniques and processes for making a Soul Whispers journal. These little journals use the whispers of your soul as inspiration for making beautiful and artful journal pages that hold your secrets and personal stories. I've designed this journal using light and neutral colours as a way to represent the reflective nature of the soul. However, I invite you to use whatever colours you best respond to. I also encourage you to work intuitively and let the story unfold in its own way. In this way, the journal will become a true reflection of your own soul. To make the pages for your journal, first decide on a size for the journal. You can make your journal any size, but smaller pages are more suitable. So I'm preparing my pages at around 4 inches wide by 5 inches high when folded, so I'm tearing the paper about 8 inches wide by 5 inches high. The pages of this journal are made using collaged papers, although you could always use just plain paper if you choose. The collage pages are made using a thin base paper, such as rice paper or mulberry printing paper, which are quite thin but very strong. You could use papers such as drawing or sketching paper, or even a good quality copy paper, but these papers are not intended for wet media, so you risk them tearing or falling apart. The pages don't have to be all the same size, and in fact, if you make each page with a slight variation in size, the journal ends up looking much more interesting. As a foundation for my pages, I'm using mulberry printing paper. When it's torn, it has a lovely feathered edge. For collaging the papers, you can choose from a variety of different types of glue. Gel medium is a popular choice. It's quite thick, but it spreads evenly, which makes it easy to work with. You could also use decoupage glue, such as Mod Podge or this Deco Art brand, or you could even use Elmer's Craft Bond glue. For collaging, I usually work with a ratio of about 1 part glue to half part water, so 1 tablespoon of glue to half a tablespoon of water, then mix it well until it's smooth. I like to add a little water at a time until it's just the right consistency, which should be slightly runny. To make the collaged pages, you can use up all your small pieces of paper and fabric, and things don't have to fit perfectly together. Simply overlap them to make them fit on the page. Use light-coloured papers and tear small irregular shapes. Glue each piece individually and overlap them on top of each other until the page has been filled. Spread the glue onto the backing paper using a small paintbrush, and be sure to use plenty of glue so the papers don't separate or come loose. For this journal, I'm using a soft vintage style colour theme, so I've chosen papers, lace and fabric in very soft colours so they look a little old and vintage. Your goal with these pages is to simply create an interesting background for the images and words that you'll be adding later on. So don't overthink things, simply pick up a paper, tear it and glue it to the page. Once the page is glued, allow it to dry for a bit. Then add some random stains to the page using ink from a stamp pad such as distress ink. Once you've applied the ink, use a small palette knife to add some paint marks. Use white paint or gesso and run the knife across the paint to apply a very thin layer of paint along the whole length of the underside of the knife. Then lightly run the underside of the knife across the surface of the page. Doing this catches all the bumps and irregularities on the surface of the page and leaves random marks of paint. Once the page is complete, allow it to fully dry before gluing collage papers to the other side. You can add lace pieces by gluing or sewing them directly onto the page. I added this piece by first gluing it, then sewing it on my sewing machine using a zigzag stitch. The stitches on the other side help to add extra texture to the page. You can also make pages that are entirely covered with lace or fabric. When making these types of pages, use a stronger glue. For gluing this piece of lace, I'm using full-strength craft bond glue. Using a small paintbrush, spread the glue over the paper as evenly as possible and make sure there's a thick layer of glue. Then press the fabric in place. As with the paper pages, you can make the lace look a little aged by applying some ink and paint stains. You can also use thin fabrics such as cheesecloth or other types of sheer fabric to add texture. First apply the glue to the page and then scrunch the fabric to create texture. Then add more glue on top of the fabric to hold the texture in place. Once the glue has dried, you can then add ink and paint marks. To finish the pages, you can sew strips of fabric down the center of the page, on the inside and the outside. This will help to reinforce them and prevent them from tearing. You can also sew on some lace along the edges. It's best to do this before you assemble the journal, otherwise it becomes too difficult to sew. To make it easy to sew, lightly glue the pieces in place. Then sew them on your sewing machine, or you can just simply leave them glued on without sewing. I made 6 double pages for my journal, however you can make more or less as you prefer. To make the cover, cut 2 pieces of corrugated cardboard, one for the front and one for the back, about the same size as the journal pages. On one side of the cardboard, tear away some of the top layer of paper in random areas around the edges, allowing the corrugated sections to become visible. If you find it difficult to release the top paper, use a tool with a sharp point, such as a seam ripper, to lift it off. Once you're happy with the way that it looks, paint over the surface with some white paint. Just give it a light coat of paint and leave some areas of the brown cardboard showing to create a contrast in colour. After the paint has dried, add some ink stain to random areas over the paint. To embellish the front cover, I'm using an image of a butterfly with a piece of teabag paper and lace underneath, and a small metal frame on top of a piece of painted burlap with the words Soul Whispers inside the frame. For your own cover, choose an image and words that best symbolize your journal. You don't have to use the same type of images or words that I do. Instead, choose something that has meaning for you. Once you've decided on the design for your cover, simply glue the pieces onto the cardboard using a liquid craft glue or a craft strength glue stick. Make sure to use enough glue so the pieces don't fall off. On the underside of the front cover, I'm adding pieces of lace with a small paper collage section on top. I made the collage section in the same way as for the pages, and then I sewed around the edges on my sewing machine. For the back cover, I glued on a piece of collage paper on the outside, and on the inside I glued some lace and another piece of the collage paper. Before the glue dries on the inside cover sections, make sure to insert the binding tape for the spine. I used some stiff fabric interfacing for the binding tape. To calculate the length of the tape, insert the pages between the covers and measure across the spine. The width of my journal spine is 1 inch, so I've cut 2 strips of fabric 1 inch wide by 6 inches long. When you cut your strips, allow 1 inch on each end to glue onto the cover, and then allow for the width of your spine section. Then cut the fabric strip twice the length so you can fold it over to make a double thickness, and this will make it a bit stronger and stiffer. My fabric strip is 6 inches long, and when folded it becomes 3 inches, 1 inch at each end to glue to the cover, plus 1 inch spine width. Mark the spine area with pencil marks, then apply some glue to the inside to adhere the fabric strips together. Position the covers with the insides facing up. Carefully peel away the fabric along the inside edges and insert the tape sections using the pencil marks as a guide. I used 2 tapes positioned about ½ inch from the top and bottom edges. However, if your journal is longer, you could use 3 or more tapes spaced evenly along the length of the cover. If necessary, apply more glue so that the tapes are secure and won't come loose. The pages are sewn into the journal individually using a non-traditional binding technique. Because the pages are all different sizes, you'll need to mark the stitching holes on each page individually. Open the cover and centre one of the closed pages along the length of the spine. Using a pencil, make pencil marks on either side of the tapes along the folded edge of the page. Make sure to leave about 1/8 inch extra on either side just to give the stitches some wiggle room. Using a bookbinding awl or large embroidery needle, punch holes through each of the pencil marks. Cut a length of bookbinding thread or thick embroidery thread about twice the length of the page. Starting at the top hole on the inside, push the needle through to the outside, leaving about a 3 to 4 inch thread tail on the inside. Sew over the fabric strip, then back through the next hole to the inside. Sew through the next hole back to the outside. Over the fabric strip, then back to the inside. Make sure the thread is taut, then weave the needle under the long stitch in the centre and tie the thread off. Sew each of the remaining pages in the same way. I originally used dark thread so it would show up better on video. However, I ended up sewing my pages using a light colour thread because it blended better with the rest of the journal. So now that the journal is made, within its pages you can now capture the whispers of your soul. The whispers of your soul are usually things that touch you emotionally, so these pages are ideal for holding your favourite words, phrases and quotes, as well as images. The easiest way to get started is to simply choose a word or phrase that appeals to you in some way. I keep a box of words cut from magazines and books just to use in my journals. Don't overthink things, simply choose a word that resonates or evokes an emotion. This is a creative journey and a process that doesn't need to be analysed. Simply trust your intuition and allow things to unfold. For this page, I was inspired to use the words, "what remains." These words brought to mind how we need to be careful and thoughtful in our actions and our deeds as we travel through this world, because after we're gone, these are the things that we'll be remembered for. I found 2 skeleton leaves that I felt symbolised this sentiment, and then chose a page in my journal where I thought the leaves would look best displayed. I tied the leaves together at the stem with a short length of embroidery thread. When I placed the leaves against the page, however, I noticed that they blended with the background and could hardly be noticed, so I applied some ink stain to darken them so they would stand out better. I glued the leaves together with the words onto the page using a glue stick. You can be as creative as you want in the interpretation of your stories and use the supplies that you have on hand to create small pages of art that are personal and meaningful to you. On this page, I already had an image of a butterfly, which I had glued on as part of the background. A butterfly brings to mind the transformation that has to take place in order for it to fully evolve. Used as a personal symbol, it reminds us that we too can evolve and grow and transform if we just believe in ourselves. To make the page, I layered some fabric scraps and made a small fabric collage, which I glued onto the page together with the words "Dwell in Possibility." On this page, I was inspired by this image of a flower gone to seed. The image brings to mind a feeling of fragility and reminds me that we all feel a little fragile at times. To make the page, I made a layered collage using the image together with some fragile papers and fabrics, and all held together with a few strong stitches. On this page I made a small fabric collage using some fabric strips and scraps sewn together. I left the strips loose and glued the words "Listen to the Whispers" underneath. I ended up gluing a pocket on the inside of the front cover to hold things that I might want to include in the journal at a later time. These little journals don't need to be rushed. They're intended to be a place where you can return to at times when you need a quiet space in your life to listen to the whispers of your soul. There's no right or wrong way to complete the pages. You can simply glue images and words that inspire you or touch your heart. Or you can make little collages, as I like to do, because hand sewing helps you to slow down and just be present in the moment. Using these techniques, I hope you're inspired to make your own little Soul Whispers journal.